as a weapon. But the Ukrainian people continue to inspire the world. I mean that sincerely. Not just inspire us, but inspire the world with their courage and how they have chose their resilience and resolve for their future. And the American people have stood proudly with them, Democrats and Republicans, together with our allies in Europe and Japan and other places, to make sure you have the financial, humanitarian, and security assistance that is needed. We're going to talk about that today. And we're going to continue to strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend itself, particularly air defense, and that's why we're going to be providing Ukraine with Patriot missile battery and training your forces to be able to accurately use it. Together with our partners, we're also going to continue to impose costs on the Kremlin, and we'll support Ukraine pursuing a just peace. President Zelensky, the United States stands with the brave people of Ukraine. We stand with you. You've been a great leader. And by the way, we have a famous thing that occurs once a year. We pick the Man of the Year in Time magazine. You are the Man of the Year in the United States of America. So welcome. We have a lot to talk about. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Great honor for me to be here. Your journalist, thank you so much for the invitation. I really wanted to come earlier. Mr. President knows about it, but I couldn't do it because the situation was so difficult. And now, if I came, in that we control the situation, and because of support. And first of all, because of your support, and I understand that we have very important topics and we'll discuss them. Everything, so many challenges in Ukraine, in Europe, in the world, and from energy to situation on battlefield. But first of all, I really, all my appreciations from my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians, all Ukrainians, from our nation, strong nations, all the appreciations to you, first of all, Mr. President, for your big support and leadership. Of course, Europe, many countries helped us and are helping now because the war is not over. It's a bit, but anyway, but that is your leadership. Thank you, first of all. Thank you so much, Mr. President. Of course, thanks my partisan support, thanks Congress, and thanks from our just ordinary people to your ordinary people, Americans. I really appreciate. I think it's very difficult to understand what does it mean when we say appreciate, but you really have to feel it. And thank you so much. Great honor to be here. And yesterday I was on Donbass in Bakhmut. That is the place on the east of our country. You know it, all the details. We had so many phone calls and spoke detailedly about it. And I want to give you something. One guy, he's really a real hero, real captain, and he asked me to pass his award. And he asked me to pass his award to President Biden. And you will understand, he is the captain of HIMARS battery. Yes, he's very brave, and he said, give it to a very brave president. And I want to give you, that is the cross for military merit. That is one.
Oh, God love you.
Yes, that is from him, and I have the list. He wrote the list. Yes, I didn't read, Mr. President. I can't read. It's not it's in Ukrainian language, but here the translation. It's from him.
And his name is, I have his name, I can contact him?
Yes.
Pavlo.
Pavlo.
Well, undeserved, but much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. He said that all many his brothers, this system saved. So thank you very much.
Well, we have a tradition here, and I will give it to him. My son, who fought in Iraq, they have what they call a command coin. You've seen those coins we have in the battlefield. I will make sure that he gets one of those.
Right. Give me, I will give.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. What a great honor.
Thank you.
Great honor. Well, thank you, Press. Appreciate it.
Okay, and that was it. U.S. President Joe Biden welcoming Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Oval Office. Truly a remarkable moment there. And if I may, with what seems to be a very candid, warm exchange, and the Ukrainian president thanking not just the American president, not just U.S. Congress, but addressing the American people specifically. And this obviously takes us to the conversation we held before the two leaders convened this brief encounter in front of the press. So let's go back to our distinguished panel now. Dan Perry, without further ado, what do you make of this exchange at the beginning of the one-on-one meeting between Biden and Zelensky?
I think that was clearly one of the images of the year that we saw here. I think we'll remember it for many years. And, you know, even though one often equates sophistication with skepticism about political leaders, what I saw from Biden, I think, was genuine appreciation of Zelensky and commitment to Ukraine. He spoke of the courage and resilience and resolve of the Ukrainian people. And from Zelensky, as you say, genuine sounding gratitude to the American president, Congress, and people. Well-placed gratitude because he is getting $100 billion. And I think his visit to the U.S. probably did accelerate some of the promises of and delivery of, the ammunitions and the money and the aid. And, you know, it's been said, Michael Tracy, I think, said this is about a hypothesis masquerading as a fact. But in my view, most policy comes from hypotheses, and the hypothesis here is a not implausible one that what is at stake is not just the interests of Ukraine, but the interests of the U.S. in as much as if Russia were allowed to get away with a theft in Ukraine, its aggression would then proceed towards other countries as well. And I think that's really why the U.S. has invested so much effort and money and taking such chances. And also, by the way, we're all very impressed by the $100 billion, and I guess it's the 45 in the most recent tranche. But remember that the U.S. economy is a $23 trillion economy. The U.S. defense budget is almost $2 trillion. At the end of the day, it is a drop in the sea. The real cost that the U.S. is incurring is the risk of a nuclear conflagration with Russia. In not abandoning Ukraine, that's the actual cost. And I can only hope that that Putin's bluffing when he speaks of nuclear deterrent.
That makes all of us, I'm safely assuming. Andrei Dobryansky, listening to both Biden and perhaps more importantly Zelensky there at the Oval. And I'm going, even though you said from the get-go of our discussion that this entire trip is aimed at the foreign audience, not at the audience back home, what is Zelensky hoping to come back with to Kyiv?
Well, again, we do know that there's an enormous amount of material, weapon systems that were announced earlier today, including the Patriot system we talked about earlier. But it's very important as well. It's not just Zelensky thanking the American people. We sit here in the United States, full of the privilege of never, ever in our history will we have a foreign invader on our territory as Ukraine is right now. So what we are giving, and I'll, back up the words of Mr. Perry, the fact that it is a drop in the bucket, what Ukraine is giving is their citizens daily war crimes against their citizens, whether it's rapes against women and children, whether it's just everyday people in civilian areas being bombed. people who are freezing on a regular basis because of Russia's attack against civilian infrastructure. That is what Ukraine is giving. What the United States is giving is simply a small part of its budget. So I expect in Congress, not only will we see a repetition of Zelensky giving a gift to members of Congress, but they will likely be thanking Zelensky to thank the Ukrainian people for defending democracy, as we all understand this is really what the war is about.
Michael, Tracy, as we're nearing the end of our time together today, Vladimir Putin obviously watching closely every hand gesture, every word that is said or not being said in D.C. at the moment. You have indicated earlier that we need to stop trying to get into his mind, but it is unlikely to assume it will go unnoticed from the Kremlin standpoint, this visit in D.C.
Well, sure. I mean, Putin convened a major defense ministry meeting today and dispatched Dmitry Medvedev to a surprise meeting in Beijing with President Xi. So clearly they're kind of counter-choreographing or counter-programming the what's coming out of Washington, D.C. But I did want to say that this idea that $100 billion in Ukraine-related funds being appropriated in less than a year is just a drop in the bucket is preposterous. Already in September of this year, Ukraine became the biggest recipient of U.S., quote, security aid since South Vietnam. Iraq and Afghanistan, their respective military operations, those governments' militaries never received anything close to how much money has been dispatched to Ukraine in terms of security aid since February. So this is a major U.S. intervention, and to trivialize it is, again, a PR tactic that is quite successful in that it's secured all this money, but it really doesn't align very accurately with the facts. And looking at this meeting and watching as we've been on this segment, the emotional value that's already being ascribed to it as, incredibly resonant and potent, and everybody's, kind of in awe of how honest and, forthright these two leaders are.
All the superlatives.
That's another indication of the efficacy of the PR strategy. So, Zelensky is nothing else. If nothing else, he's a PR master. I got to give him that.
Yeah, that's something we can all agree on. That's for certain. Michael, Tracy, Dan Perry, Andrei Dobriansky, thank you very much for joining us.